In today's episode, during listener Q&A, Daniel and I chat about tung oil with Rob Cagnetta as part of a deeper ongoing discussion about refinishing hardwood floors.
And later, you'll meet designer and preservationist Reagan Leslie.
But first, I'm Stacy Grinsfelder.
And I'm Daniel Cantor.
This is True Tales from Old Houses, episode 102. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Stacy. How are you?
I am great. I'm really enjoying this back and forth between the mini-sode and the regular episodes. I get to chat with you more frequently, which makes me happy.
And only roughly double the work for you. So we all appreciate it.
Well, we've got a great episode today. We've got Rob Cagnetta from Sutherland Welles. We have Reagan Leslie. But before we launch right into it, I do want to say thank you to our Season 10 sponsors, Sutherland Welles. We're going to be hearing that name a lot today. And the Craftsman Store. So thank you very much to both of you.
Yes.
All right. We've got a couple of announcements. Do you want to do the first one?
Oh, sure. All right. So October is soon upon us, and we are looking for your ghost story experiences. So if you are interested in recording with us, we would love to hear your voice actually tell your story. You can reach out to myself at Daniel Cantor, Stacy at Blake Hillhouse, or the True Tales from Old Houses podcast Instagram, which is at True Tales from Old Houses. And we would love to hear it. If you are microphone shy or it's just not a long enough story or whatever the case may be, we will also take written submissions.
And you can also reach out via the contact form at truetalesfromoldhouses.com too. So various ways to reach us. We're also looking for young tradespeople to interview this season as part of an ongoing series. And I'll admit that young is becoming more and more relative to me. But I would specify in this case, I guess, that we're looking for people under 40, I would say, who either chose to go into the trades right after high school, or maybe they enter the trades after 3 years or less of college or a different career path. Does that sound appropriate to you, Daniel?
Yeah, I think so, especially the part where I'm still qualified as a young person. So,
oh, yes. Yes, that's you.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of really great guests this season, but we still have some space available for more. So if you are that person or know anyone who fits the bill, please get in touch with us, where we love hearing these stories of people that are taking these unconventional and different paths into this kind of work.
And I should clarify that not every guest this season is a young tradesperson, because I made it sound like maybe it was, but we are doing as many as possible in hopes of highlighting those. So many of our interviews in the past have been with people who've come into the trades after 2-3 careers later in life, which we love as well. We love all stories, but I would really like to hear the flip side of that as well.
Yes. Bring us your youths.
Well, how about project updates? What have you got going over there in Kingston? I know we talked about a lot of things on the mini-sode last week, but what have you got for us this week?
Yeah, I feel like the mini-sode was just me and just a lot of me.
It was good. You know what? I just sat back and enjoyed it all.
It's like, gosh, do I really talk this much? Thanks. Well, if I could just real quick, so I mentioned this, I think on the last episode, but the Kingston City Land Bank currently has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 houses for sale. So one of them is 111 Down Street. It is for sale just on the open market. It's a spectacular Victorian house that needs major restoration, but it's all right there. Like, it is such a perfect house. And then the other 3 are all for affordable first-time home ownership. They are fully rehabbed, designed by yours truly, and they are available now. So if you know anybody in Kingston or the surrounding area who may be qualified, there's no harm in submitting the information, and that can be done at kclb.org/homes.
And I will put that in the show notes as well.
And now I'm done with announcements. So I've been a little bit all over the place, really just between 2 places. So I was telling you last time the floors got refinished at the cottage. No great resolution there. We put down a coat of matte finish on top of the glossy, quote unquote, satin that was not satin. And they look better. And I think I'm sort of at a point of good enough is good enough. So I'm back to work in the cottage.
You've gone through the full grieving process of anger, denial. What are the rest of it? Anger, denial,
I just
bargaining.
think acceptance is at the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
acceptance is
guess
at
we
the end.
really
I feel like
did
I'm
go
missing
through
a
all of them.
stage.
I think there's like 8, so I think we're missing a few. Well, anyway,
But here you are at acceptance at the end
here
of it.
I
I'm so proud of you.
am just giving up. Yeah, it's admirable. Yeah, so I'm back to work in the cottage as of like yesterday, but for the week or so that the floor refinishing stuff was going on, I was back in the duplex. So
Right next door.
right next door. So have I ever even talked about it on this show? Like, I
Yes,
don't. Okay,
you have.
great. Gosh.
I think so. Now that I say that, yes, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so I think what I haven't talked about on the show is it's been a very stressful several months with the duplex. Unfortunately, one of the tenants, things did not work out very well, which resulted in going to court and hiring lawyers and spending many thousands of dollars and missing out on many thousands of dollars of unpaid rent. And the whole thing has just been pretty horrendous
For everyone.
for everyone.
You, the tenant, their family, it's just a mess. Yeah.
Yes, it's an awful situation. There's no winners. Everything's just It's just bad all the way around. So consequently, my former tenant is gone. Yes. So now there's just a lot going on, and I'm really trying to finish the cottage and get it listed and sold, and sort of emotionally, financially, stress wise, like that does feel like the priority, but it also probably means sitting on a vacant apartment. And so now I feel like I have a little bit of time to come up with exactly what I'm doing, and then I can start bringing some people in. I'm definitely going to hire out the sheetrock work. I think I'll probably hire out painting, as much as that sort of kills me, because it's like, painting's easy, right? But it needs to get done. So that's that whole mess. Send sage or something. But I do want to say, I talked about this on Instagram the other day, and I was very nervous about talking about it because housing in America is a problem, and people have very strong reactions. And I have to say, like, everybody was extremely generous and understanding. And I appreciate the community around me for their kindness, because this really has been just hard and bad. So anyway, So tell me about your prolonged legal battles.
I have managed to stay out of trouble. No, you have managed to stay out of trouble as well, but unfortunately, trouble finds you.
I'm good at it.
Well, the only thing I have to report is that I rented a boom lift. The night gets delivered tomorrow. Today is a big day in my life because I have officially passed the 12-week mark of my physical recovery from surgery in June. Yay. I would clap, except clapping is a terrible noise on a microphone. But anyway, made it 12 weeks. So now I can plan for a few more strenuous tasks. And I got this boom lift, and I have a window that's high up that needs to have a glass pane replaced that I'm just going to do from the outside. Some painting. I have a few shingles to repair, woodpecker holes. That's really it. But I like to rent a boom lift to do that because it's safer for me. I don't have to maneuver a ladder. I don't really have the strength. Even without a surgery recovery, I don't have the strength to move a really tall ladder. So this is a real handy way to do that. And I believe I have it for 3 or 4 days. And I'm crossing my fingers. I've made lists. I'm getting all my supplies out, getting prepped so I can just get right to work, do the thing, send that boom lift back after 3 days. And that should be my exterior work minus foundation for this fall. I have a few little foundation things to do, odds and ends, just little places to patch. And hard to believe that this is going to be my last go around with exterior work.
That's crazy.
I know. So that's really all I have going on. I'm actually excited about it. I enjoy heights. I like working up at that level, and I'll get to peek at my roof and clean out my gutters. And I never thought I'd say it, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking forward to right now after 12 weeks of rest.
You're a daredevil on that thing. Well, please be safe, and
I will, of course,
report back on your full experience. And
I will.
I'll expect aerial views of your town.
Okay, I'll take some.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we do need to take a break right now. And shall we do it?
Sure.
All right. Listener Q&A is up next.
True Tales from Old Houses is supported by the Craftsman Store, another excellent resource from Scott Seidler of the Craftsman blog. The Craftsman Store is your go-to place for old house tools and supplies.
Once again, Scott has taken the hassle out of tracking down the specialized old house supplies that so many of us need, and he's put it all in one place for us. It's a cozy little online hardware store full of books, tools, and replacement parts.
Stacy and I source our window restoration supplies from the Craftsman Store, including diamond glazing points, which are very difficult to find, but Scott has them right there for us. He runs a top-notch small business. The customer service is an actual human being, and they ship very quickly.
And I love that he's always working on new products and new solutions for old house owners. From window restoration to plaster repair, the Craftsman Store has everything you need to do the job like a pro. So check it out at thecraftsmanstore.com. And to save 10% on your orders, you use our coupon code TrueTales.
True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Sutherland Welles. All of Sutherland Welles products are handcrafted in Providence, Rhode Island, with the highest quality sustainably grown tung oil. Tung oil, which is native to China, has been used for centuries as a durable finish for wood, metal, and stone.
You're going to learn all about this in the next segment, but unlike polyurethane, tung oil finish penetrates the surface of the wood so that it can flex and contract as the conditions change. And that makes it the perfect pre-finish or protectant for everything from fine furniture to window sash and sills.
We will be talking about floor restoration in a minute, but Sutherland Welles also has an entire product line for whatever you're working on right now. That includes siding, hardwood floors, furniture restoration, cutting boards, you name it.
To learn more about the complete product line, visit Sutherland Welles, that's Wells, sutherlandwelles.com. And to save 10% on your first order, use the coupon code TrueTales. We're back. As we mentioned, Daniel and I are doing something a little new for the first few episodes here of this season. We are doing a deeper dive into floor restoration, and we have invited Rob Cagnetta from Sutherland Welles to talk more about tung oil.
I'm Rob Cagnetta. I am the co-owner of Sutherland Welles here in Providence, Rhode Island.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Great to be here.
All right, so full disclosure, Sutherland Welles is a sponsor of True Tales from Old Houses, and we love your products and appreciate the support very much.
Thank you.
We can't think of anyone better to talk about tung oil, which is what we're going to talk about today, than you. So
Fantastic.
Let's just get started, I guess. Daniel and I have recorded your ad so much that we could explain what tung oil is in our words, but we would like you to start and tell everyone what tung oil is.
Tung oil is a natural product derived from the nut of the tung tree, which is native to China. And it is a seasonal nut that is collected and pressed for the oil, which is a cold pressed method. And the oil that's extracted from it is filtered, and the raw version of it, it's a great oil because it doesn't yellow very much and it doesn't go rancid, and primarily used in China for centuries. So what we do with it is we take the raw tung oil and then we cook it to sort of change its behavior a little bit.
And what does that process do to change its behavior?
By heating it up, you're changing sort of the way the molecules are interacting with each other. And it enables them to sort of create a better molecular bond when they cure. And what it also does is it helps the tung oil to dry because you're partially curing it, right? So cooking it is sort of enabling the molecules of it to react with oxygen over time that then makes it into a film. So what you're really doing is sort of changing it from an oil that just kind of evaporates to an oil that actually can dry as a film.
I see. And a lot of oils have to have drying agents sort of added to them to evaporate, right? So tung oil does not. Is that what I'm understanding?
The polymerized tung oil does not. It's very similar to the traditional boiled linseed oil, where it's sort of the same thing is that your raw linseed oil doesn't behave the same as a boiled linseed oil. But the two are very similar oils in terms of their performance once they're boiled, except that linseed oil can yellow a little bit more, and technically it does go rancid. But it was just really a European sort of method versus the Asian method of treating sort of wood with oils.
All right. Interesting. I did not know that at all. You bought this company. So is tung oil something you were always interested in and you used, and then you moved into buying this company and now it's your thing?
It sort of was, I think, the similar experience that a lot of people are having with different products. It really grew from years ago. One of my subcontractors using our floor finish, which is the resin modified system. And then I started getting more into the tung oil when a lot of the ingredients of other manufactured products were sort of losing some of the oils that were enabling these finishes to dry well. So we started using tung oil in a replacement for our preservative in windows. As you talk about, when we strip our windows, they're really dry and they need to be sort of resaturated or reconditioned with some natural oils. And we were sort of learning that a lot of the oils that we were buying were changing so significantly that they weren't really behaving in the same way. So we ended up using the exterior polymerized tung oil on our sash, which became sort of the formulation for Clarabelle's. And I didn't know better years ago in terms of what the petrochemical ingredients really were doing and behaving. And of course, there were the traditionalists that were turpentine and linseed oil, and then those started to change. But turpentine was no longer made from pine trees, and that linseed oil was no longer boiled. There were just sort of chemicals added. They actually add dryers to a lot of boiled linseed oil to make it quote unquote boiled. So all of these sort of changes in the industry sort of saw these changes just in how finishes behaved. And, I just felt very fortunate that I stumbled on Sutherland Welles to someone like Frank Wells, who was sort of obsessed with finding an alternative to the French polish back in the 50s, 60s. So he just happened to discover through probably this same process of elimination, well, what's going to be the best oil for performance, longevity, flexibility, and the ability to sort of recoat.
So is it correct to say that the same can of boiled linseed oil or turpentine, or there were a couple others you mentioned, like today is different than something called the same thing like 20, 30 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah. And mainly it's the cost of the raw ingredients that made a lot of the bigger manufacturers sort of get away with using sort of these true ingredients, be it the terpenes from pine trees or the way they process linseed oil, because it's not something you kind of want to do on your stovetop. It's not easy. And we're seeing this in other manufacturing processes where they're sort of looking at it like, well, this takes too many humans to make this product. And we need to sort of eliminate the human to sort of enable us to produce more product that's going to give us more revenue. So there are other parts of the industry that had changed their processes in order to make it more cost effective, especially after the World War. There was World War II. There was a lot of surplus oil type byproducts. So they were looking all these ways that they can sort of use these petrochemicals in a variety of things. And that's where we saw in the 50s a lot of paints come out and a lot of new formulations of things that would favor more that petrochemical industry and sort of get away from the natural based finishes that we'd been using for thousands of years, really. Same goes for pigments and everything else.
My friend is a woodworker and he has a different brand of tung oil. I've since turned him to the Sutherland Welles products. But what I find interesting is that it doesn't smell like Sutherland Welles products. And to me, it doesn't look like it. I feel like it has different additives in it that make it a less natural product. That is just my observation from seeing that. And why does it smell so good? Yours.
I mean, really, the tung oil itself smells sort of like a burnt, not really a burnt popcorn, but sort of a popcorny smell. And we add an odorless mineral spirits as well as a citrus-based mineral spirits. And it's the citrus that sort of gives it a little bit more of that, not sweeter smell, but less noxious smell. So that's kind of why it smells better. And like I said, not adding the dryers, and the dryers are the things that create sort of a lot of off-gassing to accelerate the curing of it, right? And those Japan dryers or whatever other dryers that people mix into it are the things that are really stinky. That's what gives you your VOCs and so forth.
Right. So tell us about the VOCs actually of tung oil products.
The VOCs of the tung oil products are really relative to your solvent. And the solvent industry, it's been harder and harder to sort of get something that's going to sort of evaporate really fast, because that's what's sort of creating the harm for the environment, is those things evaporating really fast. A lot of technology has been put into sort of taking that smell out of the petrochemical solvents. And once you get some of that smell out of there, as well as some other kind of off-gassing, the government claims it as a VOC exempt, right? So it's no longer something that is contributing to the off-gassing. You can also use natural-based thinners, solvents, like the citrus, that does have a lot of fragrance to it, and it does off-gas, but it's not the same type of off-gassing. So they consider that a VOC exempt. So, but then there are some resins that we do mix in for our exterior spar varnish, as well as for our Murdoch's line, where those will have more solvents in them to create a higher VOC. But it's interesting that technically the citrus-based is a really high VOC, but it's not a harmful VOC.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it does. It does. That's almost a whole topic in itself, isn't it? VOCs.
I wanted to circle back on, so as a layperson who's not an expert in all of these things, when I hear oil finish, I immediately think yellowing. But as somebody who is interested in refinishing my floors soon, but doesn't want their pine or fir, depending on which room, and I don't want them to turn orange, is this a good option for me, or should I be looking into other things?
That yellowing is sometimes the very thing we prize in a lot of older woodwork. You have the yellowing and sort of that degradation of the finish, but you also have the change in the wood itself. So you have these two things that sort of end up to become sort of the pumpkin pine that everybody sort of wants to recreate. But so I think it's just being mindful of the base ingredients that you're using. A lot of times the cheaper polyurethanes will have a lower quality resin in them. So those resins will be more likely to, first of all, not bond to each other really well, but will also degrade with sunlight. But when you're going natural oils or natural based, be it the shellacs, linseed oil based, or tung oil based, each one of them will have various levels of degradation. So the shellacs historically are very, very orange. The linseed is a little less orange, but some of the older varnishes would have a linseed and other resin, like pine resins and things like that. Our finish, just because tung oil is naturally resistant to yellowing, it is a good choice for that, but it will yellow. Our resin that we use for our Murdoch's line, that is our sort of super tough floor finish, that we picked a high quality resin that doesn't degrade. Well, everybody doesn't have to learn how to read an SDS sheet. I think it's always even good to call the manufacturer and say, hey, is this one going to yellow on me? Not that I always anticipate my finish to yellow in terms of my design in picking color, but sometimes that is something that you really have to think about. Is like, okay, I don't want to put on a very red stain because this is going to yellow underneath and it's going to become real orange. So it sort of becomes a choice maybe that you're thinking as you're picking your colors.
So if anybody's interested in tung oil and they want to know whether the finish will yellow, they should contact you directly, maybe?
Can we text you?
Well, okay. I should say Sutherland Welles.
Of
yes.
course. Yeah, I think our finishes, when Mary and Frank set up the business years ago, they wanted to give people lots of choices. And so sometimes those choices can be daunting in terms of which one is best for people. So I always recommend people calling us. I think it's the best way. It's one of the four of us that work here that we'll be talking to you and giving you guidance. But the yellowing part is just sort of one advantage to it. I think for us, the biggest advantage is the ability to maintain it and the ability to recoat as it fails or as it wears or fails, whatever you want to say. But that becomes sort of the biggest choice for us when we're recommending a finish is to how people are using it, how they're putting it on, and how often do you want to put it on.
So let's end on that note, basically. Let's talk a little bit about recoating. Let's say you have a worn patch. How would you fix that?
The first thing is that a lot of times it's hard to see the graying or other things that are, especially inside. You can end up with a lot of dirt. So the best thing to do is sort of to clean the floor and to remove the dirt, which is a TSP, trisodium phosphate without the phosphate, or any sort of a deep cleaning detergent that's going to lift off the color or lift off the dirt. Then you're going to be able to see what the wood's going to look like when it's wet. right? And that wet color is your finished color. Once all the dirt is off, you can see if you need to blend in a little bit with some color that you might have lost. Otherwise, it's pretty much ready for a fresh coat of tung oil on top of that. It's really as simple as sort of cleaning and coating with tung oil.
Well, we know how to contact you. Go to www.sutherlandwelles, that's WELLES, sutherlandwelles.com.
And to save 10% on your first order, use the coupon code TrueTales. Can you just give us like a 30-second elevator pitch of why I should use tung oil finish rather than anything else to refinish my floors?
The biggest reason is the maintenance of the finish. I think tung oil is one of the easiest things to recoat. And like we talked about, it is non-yellowing and it's a natural product. So it's something that becomes part of the routine and the maintenance of a house. We just experienced a house or worked with a house that 15 years ago, we did all their countertops in our interior medium. And the finish just wore off around the sink. It didn't peel. It didn't delaminate. It was just going to become that system I said, which is cleaning and recoating. In terms of restoration and preservation, conservation, it is sort of the best way to maintain your wood parts.
I just know from experience, anytime I come like within 6 feet of a countertop, is it food safe is the question I always get. So can you answer it for tung oil?
For our finishes, everything is food safe once dry. You don't want to drink any of them. You don't want to eat any of them. But once they're cured, typically overnight, then it's fine to use as a food
They
surface.
Smell so nice.
I can't spread any on my toast because the Slicky Wicky smells really good.
Morning.
Yeah.
We're going to make a beard oil soon, but
Oh, nice. Yeah. Mine's not coming in very well, but I'll look forward to,
No.
Thank you. Thank goodness,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's a skin treatment. Yes. No, well, we'll work on that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rob. This answered a ton of questions for us. It's really fun to talk to you in person. And again, we're just thrilled with having you as a sponsor and appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much, Rob. We're smarter than we were. Have a good one.
Well, Thank you for having me.
I don't know about you, Daniel, but I learned a ton. I had no idea, even though we've recorded that ad so many times.
I feel like tung oil is this like unsung hero in the background of floor refinishing. Like I don't hear about people using it very much, but it seems like an incredibly great option. And now I want to try it.
The part I was really surprised to learn that I'd never put two and two together was that basically linseed oil is the European way of refinishing, tung oil from Asia, but the results are very similar. I thought that was great. I had no idea.
I had no idea. So many things. So cool.
So many things. Yes. Well, we'll plan to have some more guests on to talk about products like that. But if you have questions about hardware floor refinishing, then please do submit them through the contact form at truetalesfromoldhouses.com.
Our guest today is Reagan Leslie. Reagan is taking Peoria, Illinois by storm with her unstoppable drive to improve housing within her community and preserve old homes.
My name is Reagan Leslie. I am an interior designer and also a preservationist and an old house steward.
Thanks for being here, Reagan. It's so nice to meet
Absolutely.
you.
Hi.
Hi, best friend.
Yeah. So anything Daniel asks me, I'm like, sure. Why not? I don't know what I could bring, but I am happy to be here.
That's the way everyone should be living.
Yeah. Just say yes. That's all if all we ever had to get was yeses in life, that'd be wonderful. But
wouldn't that be nice? That would be so much easier if everybody just did what I said, right? Or did what I asked.
I tell people all the time, like, well, I'm always like, trust me, like, it's be good. Just say yes and you'll see. But yeah, anyways.
The burden of good taste. Hi, it's so nice to see you.
Yeah, same.
Reagan and I met we were both homeowners on the first season of Cheap Old Houses. So that sort of brought us together. And I was introduced to this magical unicorn of Reagan.
Yeah, no, Daniel was always like this inspirational, it always amazed me about your ability to just go for it.
Oh,
and you do. Like, things don't seem as daunting when you talk about them and you show like, okay, we're all just kind of figuring this out as we go. which takes a lot of pressure off for people in terms of figuring it out, because I think that is hard part, especially about old houses, is there's really no roadmap at all.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like you do much the same thing. I feel like you're very open about sort of the development of your business over time and stuff. So can you talk to me?
Me too.
Me and only me. Sorry. Give me 5 minutes, Lana. Tell me about your house and what sort of led you to buying your incredible house in Peoria.
Yeah, so I grew up in an old house. For me, old houses have kind of just been obviously what you buy. Like that was the intention. This is my first home. So when I was looking for a first home, or really in my mind, it was the only home, because in, again, my world, my parents just bought one house. They've lived in it their entire lives, probably will forever. And that's just what you did. So you buy a house and you just pour yourself into it. You fix it up over time. So that, I think, cadence was kind of what I had always been accustomed with and felt comfortable with. The tricky part, I think, for me was finding that right kind of mix of a house that I can make my own, but then also a house that wasn't going to bankrupt me and be that money pit that we always fear, and something that was within budget. So this community is about an hour away from where I grew up, and it was close enough to feel comfortable and have support, but then also I could, again, be in this, it's a small city, but I call it like it's a big city for Central Illinois. So bought the house. It was in a really good neighborhood, a historic neighborhood. And I felt like, what's the worst that can happen? So the first couple of years, I really just was like, okay, let's do the small stuff that we can do on the outside so that our neighbors don't hate us and that it looks respectable. And then just little by little, we did things in the inside. It was me and my partner at the time. And then suddenly found Instagram. And I think through the pandemic, just dove into sharing that process. And that's kind of where, Cheap Old Houses had found me. It was around the same time that I started my design business.
Mm-hmm.
So my background is in theater arts and set design. And then I was like, how can I translate that to Central Illinois? And I, in my mind, thought like, if I can trick people to think that these are pretty and cool, then maybe they'll keep some of this historic architectural detail that we can't replace. And so really it was like, I was a preservationist and loving old houses first, and then was like, how can I trick people into this fold? So the design became a part of that. And it's kind of worked, I think, so far.
Very subversive.
Yeah, like just, you won't even know that I'm coming. And so I ended up, kind of just pouring everything in my house and have used that as really my platform. And then, yeah, it's the rest is history.
Amazing. So I know a little bit about this story because we talked about it a lot a couple years ago, I think now. I was really excited to hear an update. You bought a house from your local land bank.
Yes. Our governing body, so it's a subset of actually the Peoria city that created a land bank. And really it was very new in the last couple of years. They've created it, got all these houses, and we're like, what do we do with them? So me, as that old house loving champion that just knocks on everybody's door, even if they don't want to, I said, there's anything that's worth salvaging, can you just work with me and let's try to save it? So they actually were pretty receptive in the sense of we'll let you try.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel, I spoke to you kind of at the very beginning, and it might have been even before this specific house was available, but it was the financing part, because what I'm sure you run into all the time is the cost for construction, especially rehabilitation, usually supersedes the value if you want them to be affordable homes for people. So it's like that equity portion of how to create that impossible, I guess, math problem. So I had convinced them that I could buy this house. I offered them a whopping $7. And really, I was going to offer them one, but my daughter's name is Seven. So I was like, I'll feel generous and throw in an extra $6. But bought the house. I also had asked them to create a revolving fund for specifically properties that didn't have, they weren't easily financed through other mechanisms, or you would have to have the construction loan, but you couldn't just go to the bank and say, hey, let's finance this house that doesn't have any utilities on and
Right.
It's barely habitable. So they have not come along with that portion. And that is really what I'm trying to finish the house and showcase the importance, and then by kind of osmosis then create that fund. But that's something that I've always been in Daniel's ear about, is like, how do we make this happen? Which your land bank actually are the ones doing the rehabilitations, which I would have loved, but the city was like, we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're either going to demolish them or pass them on. So it was like the lesser of the two evils. But yeah, we're still kind of working through that demolition, and the roof starts Wednesday. So that's really exciting. So it's like we're finally getting like to the point where now things are happening. But the first year or so was really just trying to figure out like, how do we financially make this happen?
If I can just explain for a brief second, for those that are not aware, so what land banks do is take tax foreclosed properties from a municipality, and the goal is to return them to the tax rolls. And so that looks very different in very different places. In Peoria, property values remain pretty low. So I think the fact that you stuck with this process and spent literally like 2 years now trying to solve this puzzle is such a valuable lesson. If you see things in your community that you want to fix or change or influence in some way, usually it's a matter of sticking with it, working really hard, getting doors slammed in your face, and keep knocking on the same doors until they listen, and I think you've done all of those things. And so the ultimate revival of this home, which is a beautiful house, it's really impressive.
And I think from like a sustainability factor, I mean, there's the option of demoing all of them and then just rebuilding, which you still run into the problem. Even in Peoria, it's so affordable that the appraised values are like, if it costs sometimes, 20,000, 30,000 to put a roof on, you've already like outpraised the comps. So you kind of have this, like, we want to stay affordable, but we want to be able to do construction, which is expensive, what I'm finding out. But I mean, I think America as a whole, though, is facing these problems. Like, I think everywhere you turn, it's like, how do we provide housing at a rate that we can, from every aspect, from like the builders being compensated fairly, but also to people being able to afford it without getting underwater, and I kind of look to Daniel like, this is what's possible if you stick with it. I think you guys have the luxury of being able to do that in-house. So, and I would love to kind of hear that, because like I said, my land bank is more of like, let's give it to the residents to figure out, whereas you guys have really taken up that responsibility. And I don't know if that makes it easier or harder or
neither. Well, so I think, not to take a huge left turn into this, but so we sort of solve that problem through grants and donations. So our rehabs on average cost, call it double what we end up selling the house for. So like, it's a very different economy when those grant funds come in, whereas somebody individually trying to finance it and make it make sense financially to turn around and sell affordably or even at market rate when property values are low, it's an impossible math problem. So you really kind of need that government subsidy or large private donations.
Yeah. And we've really just looked for like private sponsors, and then my own blood, sweat, and tears. Emphasis on the tears. But it's work that's important and really needs to be done. And so I'm just trying to lean into that. And yeah.
Yeah. It takes a lot of bravery to sort of be a test case, because we are the first one doing this in Peoria.
Really,
right?
yeah. And so it's like, okay, let's show us what you got. And you're like, I've got a dream and a lot of heart.
That's good. And I appreciate it, because it takes those kind of people like you with a dream and a heart to get something started. I've been a part of different organizations over the years, and it always takes someone like you to get it going. There's a different set of skills and a different group of people sometimes that take it from that part and move it forward. But gosh, without people like you, I don't think anything would happen.
There is a community, though, that's probably within an hour of Peoria. And recently, like within the last week, I guess they've done the rehab, but they're announcing that this rehab was completed. But it was done from the government or municipality. And that, I think, changes the game, because, again, they can get grant funding that I am not qualified to get. And then since it's not my primary residence, I kind of fall in this like little subset of like micro developer, which I love micro developers. I think that's the most important aspect of keeping a community diverse, but it's sometimes challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Well, at least in New York State, there's sort of increasingly more and more funding that encourages partnerships with micro developers, and a lot of funding like specifically for affordable housing. So I would expect that to, I think nationally, I mean, it'll never be enough given the major inequity in this country, but I think the concept has been socialized enough that like more and more places are starting to
Well, that is good to hear.
allocate budget to it.
But actually, it's interesting because I was just ranting to my mother about the difficulties of this land bank house. And I'm like, I think what I'm running into, it's not even preservation centered. It's not like, oh, because I want to save the original siding, it's actually, that's saving me money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the HVAC is 4 times as much as I anticipated to be. That's and so I feel like sometimes this preservation or old houses kind of get this bad rap of being the more expensive option. And I'm like, actually, you're saving quite a bit rehabbing versus I think even sometimes building new and, ripping down.
It's retrofitting that sometimes gets you.
Well, the trades, yeah. I would say that I've moved into more of like project management, like general contracting, because my general contractor is like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do the easy stuff. And so for client work, sometimes I'll get houses that just need kind of a straightforward thing, but they're like, you want to rewire a vintage light from overseas? Like, not happening. Not happening. You can muddle through that, but not for me.
I'm working with all these different designers right now for the next round of our land bank houses. I brought in volunteer designers, which I'm very excited about, but I keep having to like add like, oh yeah, that's another kind of rule is we're not going to bring them an antique light fixture and ask them to rewire. It's got to be new out of the box or fully ready to just install. Like you forget these things.
How many have you been the designer on?
9, all except 1 so far. Yeah.
Because that's what I assumed that you were. So I don't know if the designers coming in is something that's new.
This is new. Yeah. So we did like sort of a test, which was great. I'm glad because we learned a bunch about sort of how the process could work. And then, so this is going to be the next round of rehabs. So we're doing 5, possibly 6. And so my long-term sort of vision for doing this work the way that we're doing it was to have a design committee, have a group of designers who would sort of individually take the lead on individual houses with some oversight and stuff from me, but basically bring the community in a little bit more, have, more diversity of both people and the design that they output, and not have every house look like a Daniel Cantor house because I don't need that.
It could be worse.
Our buyers tend to like them. I'll say that.
They did. Well, and but that is to me, again, that diversity of like, I think historically, I mean, even Sears kit homes, there was some variety and expression of self in these homes. They weren't just kind of cookie cutters. So I think bringing that back when we think about, modern building construction, that even if everything has to come out of the box, like there's still a way to make it feel individual. And by, the people that work on them, the people that are in them, I think that is how, I don't know, 100 years from now, you're not going to drive down the street and just be like, so is there one builder in the entire city?
Yeah.
Like, it still feels very much a natural expression of community. So
yeah. So I have to, because we did an episode on mail order or pre-cut homes last season, I have to just, I don't know, share some information that I'm going to try to. Okay, so it is more than likely if your house is in fact a mail order house, which is not really the preferred term we found out. It's probably from the Aladdin Company.
Rather than Sears. Yeah.
That was actually the biggest manufacturer, I believe, of kit homes and located right around you. So most of the ones in Illinois are Aladdin.
Okay, I'm going to have to check that out.
When you're ripping stuff out, hopefully not too much stuff, but we know how it is. When you come across framing, check to see if there's any kind of stamps or stickers on any of the framing. So if it was a pre-cut home, it'll be like numbered. Sometimes they just had like a sticker from shipping that's usually still present. And then it's also possible, and we have a land bank home that I think has this story where you could buy the plans, but then source all your materials and stuff locally and just have it built.
Okay.
So it's possible that it was like mail order plans, but not actually like a pre-cut home, that everything was sent out.
It's lore, so we'll see.
And I remember the other way too was that you could buy the plans and they would just ship you all the goods, but you had to do all the cutting. So it wasn't called a pre-cut. It was.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So you could get all of the Sent all the lumber, sent everything
sounds
you'd
so
need. Hard? It sounds very difficult to me anyway.
hard. I mean, I don't know if I'm not a builder, clearly, but I don't know if that would be nice to have everything, or just to me, it'd be overwhelming to have it all
Yeah.
at one time. Like I've got tile and lumber and all of it. But yeah, so well, and then this house had like this like bump out, and whoever did it well in terms of matching the original siding, but it's lore from this neighbor that is very confident that he was there when that porch was put on. And he's not that old of a guy, but it's one of those things where you're like, were you in diapers or were you like an adult? Just give me like rough time frame. But I think we're going to actually bring back the front porch the way it was, which will actually make the living room a little bit smaller. But I think in this particular application, it's worth it. You know, you lose a little bit of square foot, but you gain so much more. And it feels like I sketched it up in the house. It's like, nope, this is it. And I was like, even if it wasn't this, like, this is much better feel to the house. So I think it'll be fun for sure. It'll be an experience, but I hopefully like you can be like, okay, so now that the house is done and it's beautiful and you can walk through and see that it's still standing, will you now believe me and the rest of the country in the fact that, you know, so that's what I'm hoping to bring to Peoria ultimately, is just them to get on board in some capacity.
I think you're well on your way. So obviously you spent your $7, you own the thing. You've made it through permitting.
Permitting, yes. In terms of plans, initially there was this wall that I thought I was going to find a casing in. Found out it was like a stud wall, like a modern build, and it was basically through engineering and trying to figure that part out. That's when this porch came. So now we'll have to go back and change the plans for that. But yes, utilities have been permitted. So that's going to start. We should have electricity by next month and plumbing and all of those things. So that's, I feel like, that turning point of it being kind of a shell and like starting to actually turn into a home.
Definitely.
So strangely enough, it feels like once that's done, it's like easy. Like, okay, this is, you know, drywalling and mudding and painting. Like that's the easy part. I mean, tedious, but I think in a lot of ways, it's brought a lot of components of the community together also and kind of behind one particular project. So I'm hoping that the attention, although it's a little bit daunting because, again, you've got attention on you doing something that people are telling you is impossible, having other people alongside you in it makes it a little bit better.
Do you know how long this house has been vacant?
Well, I've had it for just over 18 months. And then I think before that, it had sat vacant for about 5 years. So about 6 years or so. And then before that, it was split up into, at one point, I've heard 6 different units by a property owner who didn't necessarily take care of.
If you want.
Slumlord, okay. Why I didn't like, but yeah, I mean, a lot of things weren't really done correctly. It was like, oh, we'll add this doorway, and all of a sudden now this is an apartment. Like that's not, you know. So luckily, he didn't really like. He just added more things as opposed to ripping out a lot of the floor plan, but bringing that back. A lot of the things that didn't make sense before, now when I have the plans of these kit homes, I'm like, oh, so this was an entryway and this led through here, and that's why this is slumping, because they basically ripped it out and didn't reinforce it, you know. So it's that uncovering of like what's going on in here. And so that took a little bit. But yeah, it's now I think I've like finally landed on really what it was. And that's one of the things that I always stress the importance of. I did it in my own house, and I try to do it with clients as much as possible, is like the time and patience aspect of it. And although you want it to go really fast, you have to let the house tell you. And so they don't really, you know, houses don't speak swiftly, or at least in my opinion, they don't.
No, they don't.
Sometimes it takes a little bit and you're like, well, yeah. And you're like, I've been sitting here for 18 months. It never dawned on me to do this. And I think that's the beauty of it. So Daniel, I feel like you are so productive. I think you have this like, we'll just work through it. It takes time. And sometimes we have to pivot, or sometimes we jump to a different project.
Yeah, I think these houses teach you a certain level of Zen master patience, because a lot of things just take as long as they take, and there's really no getting around it.
Yeah. I always love it when people ask me, they're like, how long does it take to do a window? I'm like, well, it takes as long as it takes. Like when you're done, you're done. People want to just put things in a neat little box. Like, tell me how much time this is going to take and this is going to take. And I get that, because everybody likes to have a certain level of control over their lives. And that loss of control, that loss of ability to determine how long something is going to take can be very frustrating for people. But yeah, you're right. You just have to kind of take a breath, move forward. And when you're done, you're done.
Hopefully, until you look at another window and you're like,
not that one. Yeah.
It just repeats itself.
I have a couple of design questions I want to ask you because I find this very interesting. My brain doesn't work this way. You and Daniel work this way, but my brain doesn't work this way. So I'm just curious, like, what design elements feel like home to you?
It's very difficult to do it on demand, but the homes that I really love are like the ones that just evolved naturally. They're not styled with the intention of being, like, and I can talk about juxtaposition and scale and all of that, and it kind of matters. But I think just filling your home with things that make you happy and you enjoy and that are comfortable. When I'm in homes that have done that and in my own, like that to me feels good. And it's what a home should feel like. Sometimes when I go into homes and I mean, beautiful. I mean, I'm not going to argue with their beauty, but if they're almost too perfect, it feels beautiful, but not home. So I think that's that thing that I think having, especially in an old house, you have the ability to play on the quirkiness of it. The fact that like, this is like a patch job and this is missing that piece and that's a little squeaky and this door doesn't shut quite right. And it's like, and again, those are things I grew up with. So I didn't really, I've never had a perfect house, I guess. So, but yeah, those are the parts that I really love and appreciate. And I try to tell people to appreciate those things about their own homes.
You are a small business owner, serial rehabber of homes. You have clients. You seem to not sleep, but you're also a mom. And I'm curious. So your daughter is 7.
Well, her name is 7.
Yes.
Like the number, and she is 5 years old.
5 years.
Currently. Yes.
I guess, how does she feel about what mommy does? And sorry, is it weird that I just called you mommy?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so she's really been there from like day one. Like I used to take her to, before I had clients, I would do all of these like networking events and I'd always have this like infant with me. And she was a very attached infant. So she's really seen it from the beginning. I love the fact that she'll see my logo someplace and she's like, Mommy, it's your work. I don't think it really, she doesn't, I think half of it, like I don't go to a place to work. It's just everything is my work, which is, I don't know how she compares it to like her dad or like other parents and what they do, but she has this little game that she has on her tablet and it's very simple, but it's like like she can design. So she's like, oh, I want this wall color and I want to change up this flooring. And I saw her switch the orientation of like this clawfoot tub. Like, I don't know why you would care that like the tub fill was on this side versus that side. But in her mind, like she was very intentional about that. So, I mean, at 5, it's hard to say because I mean, this part of it's like, I'm just tired. I want to go home and I don't care about this lighting. But she definitely understands that like mommy makes things pretty. And so that's just a joy to watch. It just have an appreciation. It's not that I necessarily want her to like follow in my footsteps, but I think being able to dream about the way in which you show up in the world, like it doesn't have to be a black and white thing. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it could be like I'm a doctor and that's what I went to medical school and that's what I did and that's what I love and that's what I'm good at. And I think ultimately I'm an artist, I use old houses kind of as my tapestry, if you will, but it's just, I show up in ways that I'm good at and enjoy, and that's really the only thing that I get up every day, like determined to do. So it has created this, beautiful career in design. And then I'm also involved I co-founded another firm called Urban Kind. We were founded last September, so it's been almost 1 year, and we've contracted with the city to do some of their parklet like redesign and placement. But our goal was to become kind of consultants for urban planners, and we can kind of consider ourselves urban designers, but figuring out how you plan out a city from just being holistic, being intentional, creating, equitable placemaking opportunities. And so that has really kind of like historic design and old houses, but then more broadly, what does that look like for the community and why that's important? So they kind of complement each other, I guess.
For sure.
But it's really rewarding because, again, a lot of the work that I get to do for a living is also work that I really believe in. So it's not just, so that's why it feels like I'm never sleeping, because I probably am not. I'm always thinking, always doing something.
Yeah.
Sorry, say the name of the new organization again.
It's Urban Kind without an A. So URBNkind.com. Yeah.
I had no idea you did that. I don't know how you do all these things.
Well, that's like when I go missing from like social media. It's like, hey guys, I'm still alive. I am working. I need like a camera on my shoulder that can just, like just catch up and watch what I'm doing.
Before we say goodbye, could you let everyone know where they can find you on social media or hire you for a project?
Oh, that would be wonderful. So you can find me on Instagram at blackhouse7, all spelled out. And then my design firm is leslietylerdesign.com, or you can look up Urban Kind, and that's URBNKIND.com if you are a municipality and you're looking for some interesting and inventive ways of designing.
And I'll put that all in the show notes too, for sure.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. But yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Reagan. It's so nice to catch up. Please come back.
I will.
I want to hear more about Urban Kind in about, how about another year?
Yeah, I would love to. At that point, I'll be like, figured it out, guys. Don't worry.
All the problems are solved.
We will definitely come back around to you, Reagan, because I really want to hear more about that as well.
Thank you, Reagan.
Thank you for listening to True Tales from Old Houses, and thank you to our guests today, Rob Cagnetta and Reagan Leslie.
To continue the conversation, join us over on Facebook and Instagram at True Tales from Old Houses. You can follow Stacy at Blake Hillhouse or myself at Daniel Cantor.
And to learn more about everything we discussed in today's episode or to request a transcript, visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com. Until next time.
Catch you on the mini-sode.